Well, I got a school deferment and I went to St. Cloud State, and I I worked at it, but not as hard as I should have. I discovered beer, and I discovered that there was an incredible amount of good-looking girls in my age group, and between the two of those, it took away from my study time. So I wasn't doing the best in school, and I was just wasting my time. I was really too immature. Well, it was the physical part of it. To me, seemed like I was going to be in like 10 or 12 weeks in a row having Phi Ed. That part of it was just kind of fun. I was, I played college football and was in training, and I was in pretty good shape. So the physical part of basic training didn't really affect me that much. The mental training was a little different. My parents, I had a nice, strict family, and we had rules we had to follow, but they didn't necessarily yell at me all the time. My MOS was, I was a crypto computer repairman, and we fixed the machines that would turn typewritten messages into cipher. And if I'm going to communicate with you, I would type it out and we'd feed it into our machine, and it would come out of these crypto machines as a real garbled mess. When you would get it, you would get that garbled mess. Your machine would then turn it back into print so that we could get the message. We had to hook our crypto machines up to radar that would shoot out the messages, and from one station to another, one spot to another. But carrying that machine weighed about 35 pounds or so. That just put an extra target on you. So, I mean, to the enemy, you appeared to be a little more important. That was kind of the downside of all of that. And so I honestly was scared for a year. I got to Vietnam in approximately the middle of the month in January '68. And 2 weeks later, the Tet Offensive took place in Vietnam. And the Tet Offensive actually started in the city that I was at. It was called Nha Trang. It was like in the central part of Vietnam, right on the ocean. And the times for the Viet Cong got mixed up somehow, and it was supposed to. I don't know exact times. I'm just going to use the example, but it was supposed to start at like 6 o'clock throughout the country. The Tet Offensive was going to start. It started at 4 o'clock in the Trang. There was a 2-hour communications gap with them, and it started 2 hours early in our city. And the base camp that I was at, we got overrun. There's 200 guys coming off an airplane kissing the tarmac, the runway. We're so happy to be back in America. And that day I got discharged from the Army that day. And I got back to Minneapolis at 6 o'clock on January 12th, again 6 o'clock in the evening, and it was 31 below. And so it was a 100-degree temperature change for me, but I was so happy. We got spit on and things thrown at us. The officials at the Army base said you should go back in your civilian clothes. Well, I didn't have any civilian clothes then. I just came back from the jungle. And if you flew back, you got to fly back military standby, but you had to have your uniform on. And it was really kind of ugly to come back knowing that you did the duty that you were supposed to. Or I got called. I was in the service, and had people call you a lot of ugly names and spit at you and yell at you, and Like, this isn't right. You shouldn't be yelling or spitting at us. You should be at the powers to be that got us in this mess. So I'm never unhappy that I went in the military, because it really made me grow up. And from the time I entered in the military, or I dropped out of school and entered in the military, did my military commitment, and when I came back to school, I decided to come back to college. College was so much easier for me. It was just a snap. After graduation, I got hired up in Cloquet. I got a teaching job in Cloquet, and we moved there, and we've been there ever since. My wife and I, and we raised our family there, and this is where we're going to stay, in the Northland. Well, I still have nightmares, but we have had, lots and lots of traumatic experiences in that 1 year that have stayed with me to this day. Probably if the Vietnam vet has done anything for other veterans, it is that we've kind of paved the way home for current veterans, that we don't, if we're upset with what's happened in other places, we're upset with the powers that be. We're not upset with the soldiers themselves. They're just doing their duty. So I look that's been a positive for us, that we helped other veterans now get home and be treated the way they should be treated. And I'm very proud of that.